Hi everyone, we're going to get started. This is Kaitlin Sopoci-Belknap from Move to Amend, and you should be hearing me now, so if you could just chat in the bottom if you can hear, that would be helpful. We're going to, great, you can hear me. Okay, cool. So if you have questions throughout, you can chat your questions in the chat bar, and I'm the person who's on the Move to Amend record in here, and so I'll respond, and then we also, if you have a question that's on the subject that we're talking about, I might interject and interrupt John to ask the question, or if it's kind of more general, you can type it as soon as you think of it, and then we'll do questions and answers at the end as well. And if you're having any technical difficulties, suggest contacting any meeting directly. That's the service that we use, and we're not in a position to do technical support while we're doing the webinar, but all of the webinars are always recorded and the slides are posted online. And actually now we've changed our system, so the recording online will actually be YouTube video, so it's even more accessible and easy to use, and that'll just be embedded on the page on our website. So this recording will be up probably by tomorrow at the latest, and all the past recordings are available there as well. So I want to turn it over to John Gallagher. John is one of our super duper awesome interns here in the office. And he and Sage Gerson, who has class right now, so she wasn't able to help lead this webinar, but they created it together, and he's going to lead most of the discussion today, and I'm just in charge of your questions. So when you have them, go ahead and chat them, and if you're having issues, I'll try to help you. I'll do my best, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to John.
Hi everyone, my name is John Gallagher. I'm a field organizing intern here in Eureka with Move to Amend. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from the Chicago area. Went to school at the University of Denver and graduated almost exactly a year ago, and I have a degree in international studies and Spanish. And next fall I will be pursuing a master's degree in public affairs. And while I was undergrad, I was involved in several student organizations. You can trust me, I kind of know what I'm talking about. So, getting started.
Do you want to go over what we're going to say?
Oh, sure. We have an agenda that I will not skip. So we're just going to go over who Move to Amend is briefly, and moving on from there, we'll just go over the best strategies for organizing with students, including targeting student groups, the purposes of faculty and school administrations, and tips for advertising on campus. And after that, we will do a question and answer session. And first, actually, we're going to do a poll. So I think you should all be seeing a poll right now. Not yet. Now you should see a poll. So go ahead and click on that. All right. So thank you for participating. And it looks like we have a couple people who were student organizers, and so that's good. We have a good mix. People who were and who weren't. And now we have another poll coming on, so stay tuned for that. All right, and the poll is up. Cool. All right, so it looks like this is a pretty relevant webinar for everyone then. So thank you for giving us some feedback. All right. And moving on, so who is Move to Amend? Move to Amend is a coalition of activists working to amend the Constitution to end all forms of corporate personhood as we build a movement for vital, people-powered democracy in the United States. So this is really important to keep in mind as we think about why students and youth need to be included. And so Move to Amend opposes corporate constitutional rights. First of all, democratic political actors must be human beings. Seems pretty obvious, but the law does not seem to agree. And secondly, the Bill of Rights defines that inalienable rights that we the people claim by virtue of being a human. Corporations and any artificial entities created by the government have been claiming status as persons in this basic sense, which subverts democracy. So we're, building a coalition to work against all that. And our main goal is to amend the U.S. Constitution and provoke a movement for self-determination. And Move to Amend's We the People amendment states that, first of all, artificial entities such as corporations do not have constitutional rights, and secondly, that money is not speech. And so those are the two kind of main points that we want to keep together, that money is not speech, but also that corporations are not people. And so it's more than money is not speech. And so our strategy is to build a broad and deep social movement. We're not just focused on getting the amendment pushed through, a bunch of out-of-touch politicians. We're focused on educating and grassroots community building. So our movement is part of a long-standing struggle for democracy and self-determination. And going off of that, only about 5% of the population were considered a political people under the Constitution in 1776. So the history of the U.S. has been a struggle of all people to be defined as legal persons, and now corporations are going off of that and surpassing what was legally outlined for them in the Constitution. So we need to go back to the Constitution and amend it to make sure that only people, real people, have real constitutional rights. So our principles, we are very committed to accountability and responsibility, both personally and organizationally. So what that means is that we are dedicated to transparency, community, movement building, and I'll talk about some of those things later on. And it's just very important to remember that we're, especially the community and movement building aspects. And we also have a dedication to our mission, goals, and tactics, which includes anti-oppression within ourselves, communities, workplaces, policies, and representation. And that's something that is often overlooked a bit, so it's something that everyone needs to keep in mind, the anti-oppression aspect and inclusion of all traditionally marginalized groups. So moving on to the student organization and organizing with students aspect, we realize that it is June and many schools have been let out for the summer. So we thought this was kind of a good time to jump in and give you some ideas and some of the basics for organizing with students, so you can have the entire summer to kind of think of your own strategy and what works best for your local affiliate. So why work with students? First of all, they're a large untapped pool of volunteers. They're readily available and easy to reach out to. You're not going to get a group of such potential anywhere else. This is a very unique sort of environment. People are energetic, educated, opinionated, often highly skilled and motivated, ready to learn. Of course, I know of several students who do not fit these categories. These are broad generalizations, but in general, people are in school to learn and because they are motivated to learn. And a lot of the stuff is built into the system. So for classes or honor societies or clubs, a lot of times students need volunteer hours or intern credits, and so this is where you can come in and offer an outlet for them to volunteer or work with you as an intern. And another reason to work with students is that it's a ready-made community and infrastructure, and I really can't emphasize this enough. It's really a huge boon to overcoming a lot of the hurdles that you see while you are organizing outside of universities and colleges and schools. And additionally, students are traditionally marginalized and frustrated at this marginalization, which means that they are ready to find an outlet, and Move to Amend is a perfect outlet for that. Remember, keeping in mind that Move to Amend is dedicated to building a coalition with all groups, especially underrepresented groups. So this is, students are a good way to correct that. And lastly, it's important to keep in mind that successful social movements are multi-generational and are never just a one-man, a one-team endeavor. It requires input from all sorts of people. So how to approach students? There are several methods, and I'm going to get into a bunch of advertising strategies later, but this is just kind of an overview of ways to talk to students. So first of all, flyering. It's petition gathering near campus, basically standing outside on a corner or a crosswalk with clipboards with petitions and giving a little 15-second spiel of who Move to Amend is and what we are, and getting a signature. This is a tactic that groups like Greenpeace use. You might have seen them standing at corners. And if you do use this, this isn't the most effective strategy because it can be a little annoying to be frank, and so it's not, you don't get the best communication that you're really trying to go for. Secondly, you can target student organizations. This is a great way to get an audience whose interests that you already are aware of, and it's really easy to plan out how we're going to talk to people if you go into student organizations and talk to them that way. So this is pretty effective, and it's something I'll get into a little later on, and I will highly recommend that. But the most effective way to communicate with students is with anyone else, one-on-one contact. This way you can get a sense of what their interest is, what their level of dedication is, what their skills are, and if they meet yours as a group. And so it's really the best way to get in contact. When you're talking to people, make sure you want to bring in specifics about Move to Amend and maybe particular projects or campaigns that we have going on. For example, the We the People Listen campaign that's going to be launching in July, I believe, is a kind of great way to rope in beginners. So just keep an eye on our website for updates with all those things. Be explicit and specific, like I said, and make the case for why Move to Amend applies to them. So with student organizations, there are lots of ways you can use student organizations to your advantage, and several different groups that you can target. The first one, obviously, is going to be political groups, college Democrats, college Republicans, college Greens, environmental groups. These are all really captive audiences for Move to Amend. All of them are going to be interested in what we have to say. So it's not a bad idea to try to go in and maybe talk to them during one of their meetings or sending an email, but talking to them is ideal. Same thing with multicultural groups, keeping in mind the dedication to building a multi-ethnic, multicultural coalition and representing traditionally underrepresented minorities. And so some of the ways you can plug in with these student organizations is to co-sponsor events. For example, if you are trying to reach a larger student audience on campus, you might need a student or student group to co-sponsor and reserve the room and make sure that everything is all set so you can avoid fees or the like. And so you can screen a movie, you can host a study group, anything like that. Another way, speaking at meetings, this is very beneficial. You get direct one-on-one time, and it's very helpful. And so there's been some talk about Move to Amend starting our own student organizations, student chapters around the country. And right now, Move to Amend is focused on education and building community, and so it's not a bad idea, but what we really want to focus on is larger communities and not just having a couple students band together and be and claim they Move to Amend and then not represent the entire community at large, and then after a year or two when they graduate, dissipate. Now that being said, student groups at schools are a great tool to include students, and are a great way to reach a large audience. They have access to all sorts of resources, and it really just depends on what your group needs. We just want to avoid competition between community-based groups and university groups, and we want it to be all-inclusive. So if you feel that your university would benefit and your group would benefit from a student group, then by all means, we can start that conversation, and it would be very, it could be very beneficial. We just want to make sure there's no strife between the university group and the community group, and yeah.
Can I say something about that, maybe?
Sure, yeah.
Just to add in an example, so Democracy Unlimited, which many of you know is one of the coalition organizations of Move to Amend. We're the ones who keep the office and staff the office. And historically, at our university here at Humboldt State, we have had a Democracy Unlimited student group, and it was separate from Democracy Unlimited. However, it was connected, and the kind of leaders of the student group were volunteers with Democracy Unlimited, and they worked on Democracy Unlimited's projects as volunteers. But then they also had the student group, and they would do outreach to the campus. So oftentimes they would be the ones that would be tabling at the campus and signing people up or getting people involved or flyering or out with a clipboard on the corner. And so it's fellow students talking to each other, which makes it a little bit more easy to approach folks and get a good response. And then also we would partner with them and do events together on campus, but not always doing all of our events on campus, because oftentimes folks from the community won't go onto campus or don't hear about things. We were just trying to kind of make a bridge and have a group that had its own autonomy to some extent, but then also was really connected. And so that's kind of what we're envisioning might work well for Move to Amend affiliates, is if there was like a wing of your affiliate that is actually a campus group. You can certainly connect with groups like John was saying that are already established that have other focuses, but even thinking about forming a Move to Amend chapter on the campus and having that be connected with your affiliate. But we don't want affiliates to entirely be student groups, because our experience is that that's not sustainable, and students have a lot to do and they move on, and so then the affiliate disappears. And so using it as a bridge is a great way to plug students in so that they're doing the outreach to each other, but then they're also connected with the larger community and hopefully getting a better sense of what's going on with the community and not primarily only staying focused on their campus.
Great, thanks, Kaitlin. That was a great example. So yeah, just to close, just beware of high turnover rates with that as well, yeah. So organizing on campus is not as simple as just going into it and gathering up a bunch of students and saying, hey, let's start a group. This is Move to Amend. Come on and join. There is a bureaucracy. It can be very confusing, complicated, especially if you're not a student, if you're coming from the outside. So if you're from the outside trying to organize students, these are just a few tips and pointers to navigating the system. So when dealing with faculty, faculty are a great resource to, they're a great liaison from the community into the students. They are usually involved, depending on the department, they're usually involved in community activities, and also obviously have to deal with students every once in a while. So that can be a great way to kind of build a bridge to students on campus. So by emailing a professor or calling them, you can set up a classroom visit for a relevant class. These are called class wraps, and it's just you go in and give a short presentation on Move to Amend, and and pass around a petition possibly. You also want to kind of highlight the internship program. Students are the prime age for internships, and Move to Amend does have an internship program. So it's a great way to plug in. And so you want to have something concrete and something that the students can, right then and there get involved with, not just a vague, here's Move to Amend, come join us sometime. No, you want to have some sort of, it's better to have a concrete ask of the visit. And faculty,
Go ahead, finish.
Okay.
I'm sorry, and then I want to ask.
Okay. And faculty are also a good resource for finding student groups. A lot of them are faculty advisors, and they can be a great help with finding student groups. So here's Kaitlin.
So again, at Democracy Unlimited, what we would do when working on doing these classroom presentations is we'd actually look at the departments that might make sense to reach out to, and then make a list of the faculty and then email everyone. So we would look at the social work department, which oftentimes might be missed, but a lot of social work is about changing policy, and actually, depending on the school itself, they might be really interested in having an example of a group that's working on a more meta level rather than just the direct service that a lot of social work is, because they're teaching about both. And so having a group come in that's working on changing policy is oftentimes very exciting. So social work department, sociology department, the political science, history, although oftentimes history departments are very conservative, and so we didn't have as much luck there as you'd think we might, but it's worth a shot. And then also potentially if you have a law school, that's another possibility. And basically emailing the professors and giving a little bit of background about what it is that you would talk about and asking if there's room. And oftentimes professors want to have outside visitors and want to expose students to different perspectives, even if they personally don't agree with you. So it's a great medium, as John said, to go in and give a quick presentation and then have an ask at the end. It might just be to sign the petition if people want to get involved. It might be to invite them to a particular event if you've got that coming up. So basically at the beginning of every semester, Democracy Unlimited would email our list of professors and ask if they were interested. And then from there we built the ones who were the best allies, and that also helped with setting up our own campus group, because oftentimes they need faculty advisors, and so we found members and supporters out of that pool of faculty.
Great, thank you. And so aside from the faculty, there's also the administration. This is the obviously administrative side of things on campus, and this is just a sample, a sample administration highlighting the chain of command and displaying that there are many different offices that you want to, that you may, and you may feel overwhelmed by how many there are, and the left hand doesn't always know what the right hand is doing, so it can be very complicated to work through. But I just wanted to highlight that you usually want to, if you're talking about organizing with students, you usually want to go for the student affairs office. They often have someone working with outside groups, and they can tell you the proper way to advertise on campus, things like that. So like I said, it's often complex bureaucracy, and posting flyers and advertisements often need permission, and it can be very labyrinthine, and each building sometimes has its own permissions as well. So just make sure you know the regulations and know who you need to talk to. And this is different for every campus. But if you're going to post in dormitories, residence halls, talk to the housing office. If you're going to post elsewhere on campus, I would usually say the student affairs office can help you, or at least point in the right direction. And so advertising strategies on campus, there are tons of ways to advertise on campus. Some of them more effective than others. Email, so you can ask student leaders to forward to their group listservs, which is easy and low involvement, but not the best, not the most effective. You don't get much response from email usually. Remember, the best way is face-to-face contact, one-on-one contact. Flyers, like I said, just make sure you get the permissions to post them in proper areas. You can put them in, you can target high traffic areas like residence halls, cafeterias, cafes around near campus, things like that. Some of the best advertisements I've seen have been in cafeterias, little like table stands. You just kind of fold paper into like a three-cornered, I guess, shape so it can stand up on its own. And so that's an easy way. You know, you're sitting down and eating, and you look at this piece of paper and absorb the information that way. So that's one idea to get the word out there, and that will also need permission from most likely the housing office or student affairs. Chalking on sidewalks is something that happens on campuses everywhere all the time, and it's also a great way to get the word out. For example, there was one I saw. It was basically people were drawing body outlines on the sidewalk, so to call attention to human rights abuses and military intervention, which they did not agree with. So that was one clever way of using chalk. Otherwise, you can just write down "move to amend," meeting 6 p.m. in the library. Also very effective. Tabling, there are usually designated areas to table. You can't just set up in the middle of campus, and that also needs permission from the Student Affairs Office. And like I said, mentioned earlier, working with student organizations, they're often your best way to get the ins and outs of organizing on campus, and they will know who to talk to usually, and the inside scoop on campus.
And just to underscore that, if you have a student club that is a Move to Amend club, all of the things that John outlined here are easier to do because it's actually the students speaking to their peers, and the university is more inclined to, for example, at HSU here, student clubs are allowed to put up more posters than an outside group, or they're allowed access to more places to do things like an outside group isn't allowed to put up the table tents like John described, but a campus group would be able to, especially a coalition of them. So just thinking about, as with any organizing of any group, if you have folks who are actually from the group who are doing the organizing, it's going to be more effective. They're going to speak the language to be able to get through the bureaucracy, and then also they know what it is that is effective to talk to other students because they're students themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. Just make sure you know what you're doing and who you're talking to. So there are some potential challenges with organizing on campus. However, these are all preventable, and just with a little extra work and some foresight and forethought, you can prevent these. So with apathy, obviously, you're not going to reach every student. Not every student is going to be interested in Move to Amend. Young people have a reputation for being a little apathetic, which
boo.
which boo, yeah. And so, you just got to find the right way to talk to them. You got to find what they're interested in, what their skills are, and so this is why talking to people one-on-one is the best way to get them involved, because you can learn all those things easily. Secondly, the bureaucracy can be a little overwhelming, but again, just have a liaison and know who to talk to. And the high turnover rate is also a challenge, and that's kind of unavoidable. It's just, the nature of being in school and graduating and having other obligations than Move to Amend. And as long as you keep an infrastructure in place and an organization, and they can report back to someone like in the larger community, those should be avoidable. And so after you talk to a potential member at an event or tabling, just make sure you follow up with a phone call, and this is the best way to get people involved and prevent these challenges. And so there are additional resources. This is a helpful website I found. It was geared more towards students who were organizing on campus themselves, but it still had some helpful instructions for organizing on campus from an outside perspective. And this is on our website. Soon, I think, I'm not sure if they're up yet. Tonight they'll be uploaded. We're going to have templates for reaching out to students, faculty and teachers. And I think that's it. I don't know if there are other resources, but just check there. Check on our website at this webinar, and there will be resources for organizing. All right. So, any questions?
Before we open it up to questions, I just want to underscore. Oops, hold on here. Before we open it for questions, I just want to underscore a couple things. So oftentimes students are thought of as sort of this like bank of people who can do low-level grunt work, and I really want to discourage anyone from taking that approach with students. I've spoken to a few groups who, especially groups that came out of Occupy, that had young people involved with their groups, and then over time that involvement fizzled. And in those conversations found that, students, the younger folks, were not being asked to be involved in leadership positions, weren't given the opportunity to help facilitate meetings or to grow and actually be leaders of the group. And it's no wonder they went away. And just think about yourself, and if you're really interested in something and want to be involved with it and put your time in. Students are very busy. They're supposed to be in school. Oftentimes people have to work as well, and they have a lot to do and a lot to juggle. And they're not going to come back if they're in if they're not being treated with respect or as if they're just as much of a worthy participant as anyone else. And I'm underscoring this because, one, we've seen some of it, and two, just to be real candid about it, at this point, Move to Amend really isn't very multi-generational at the local level especially. That's not true of every single affiliate, but oftentimes that's true. And most of the time that's not for lack of good intention, but it's clear that we need to, I think, make a really concerted effort if we are going to be multi-generational. And our read of history is that, every successful social movement has been multi-generational, and to do what we're trying to do, we can't leave out young people. They're the ones who have to live with this world where where corporations have constitutional rights. And our experience in terms of our internship program and when we do outreach to campuses from the national level is that there are tons of students who are very motivated and very interested in this issue. So sometimes it can be a bit of a trick to get them involved locally, but coming at it with an approach that they're just young people and they don't know what they're doing or they don't have the skills is a hindrance. And we have been seeing some of that, kind of an ageist philosophy, not from all affiliates, but enough that I'm saying it here because I think it's something that we really need to take a hard look at and make sure that we don't have going on, which is part of why we wanted to do this webinar on this topic, and why I hope that folks will, put some real attention into thinking about how to reach out to students and make a place for them, because there are lots of skills that young people have and experience that young people bring to the table that are real assets, and also that might be lacking from your group. I know that technology is a challenge for a number of affiliates, and there's just kind of no way around it. If you've worked with a computer since you were 10 years old, you're going to be pretty proficient at using computers and using Nation Builder and our other systems. And if you're coming to computers when you're, well into middle age, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. It's a hurdle that can be definitely overcome, but we are definitely seeing, our experience is that that there is a technology gap with a lot of affiliates in Move to Amend, and so recognizing that not all young people are good with technology, but a lot of them are, that there are some roles where we might really need young people in ways that we can't, things that we can't meet or aren't meeting with the group that we have now, and recognizing the value of that is really important. So it's a little bit harder for somebody who, is in his 20s to outline all that, but our experience working here in the office is that we definitely do have to examine this as Move to Amend, and even just some of the ways that our interns get talked to in the office illustrates that it makes me cringe to think about some folks going out and doing outreach to students. So I know it's kind of a weird medium to go into something like that, but is really something that I think that we need to discuss, and we want to put some more attention towards having more multi-generational dialogue within Move to Amend, because obviously ageism cuts both ways, and we don't want to ignore that fact. So moving on from that, that's just the last thing I wanted to say and kind of give you the transparency of why we wanted to dive into this topic, not just because it's June and school will be starting up in a couple months, but also because we feel like this needs some real attention and thought. So is there anybody who has any questions or comments and John and I will do our best to answer them between us. So can I steal this back so that I can navigate this? So let's see. I can see that, so Veronica asks, I can see that colleges and universities make it hard for outside groups to make contact with student groups. Any suggestions on how to break through the gates? Do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. I have not experienced that, really. I've mostly done organizing from the inside, but from what I have seen is it's really important to get an inside perspective. Maybe that's talking to a faculty member, maybe it's getting a couple of students involved who can help you with that. And the question was to make contact with student groups. Yeah, so I think faculty is the best way to do that. And otherwise, just finding interested students and asking them to help you.
Yeah, so John's suggestion earlier on about potentially just going to campus and petitioning or petitioning in neighborhoods where there's lots of students who live is a good way to, to find folks. Like you said, a lot of people might be rushing off to class and not in a position to talk to you, but there will be those folks who, who maybe they see your sign that you have, or if you use the Adbusters corporate flag, catches their attention. And my experience is that oftentimes, spending, say, like one day a week, having a few people, you will find those students who are involved with campus groups already, and they know the system, and they, can ask their professor if you could give a presentation in the class, or they would say you can come speak to our student group, or, maybe we'd get started creating a club, and just the general principle of organizing of like going to where folks are, and maybe not trying to start with going through the bureaucratic channels of like doing a presentation or getting a list of student groups, because that can sometimes be something that they're not going to make available to non-students. But first, just trying to find some students who are actively engaged in organizing on their campus or in student activism, and so they know how they know what the departments are and who it is. And then, like I said, we did have good luck just going through the departments and emailing faculty. A lot of the faculty that we emailed, we didn't get a response. So I'm not saying that you'll get, like an 80% response rate, but even just emailing, 50 people and having 3 folks say, yeah, you can come speak in my class, that's potentially, anywhere from 40 to 150 students that then you're talking to and giving a quick presentation to. So I would start with those 2 things, going to the campus and petitioning, and emailing faculty. Let's see, Victor asks, besides an internship, what's in it for them? You want to take that?
Sure. Well, that's up to you. You have to talk to them and make the case about Move to Mend, and see where their interests lie, and see how you can, plug in with them. Also, a lot of classes or, honor societies, other clubs require volunteer hours or other things like that. And so this is, as a nonprofit, Move to Mend can qualify for that. And a lot of students are really looking to have an experience outside of the classroom and to get experience organizing, experience helping run clubs. It's a good resume booster, but it's also a good personal booster as well. And so it's multifaceted, and I guess the best way to figure out what they need and what they want is just to go ahead and talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, my experience is that there are lots of students who want to be, I was very excited to go to college because I could finally be the activist that I didn't feel like I could be in high school. So those are the folks you're looking for. And just like with any other group of people, not everyone is going to be in a position to get involved actively, but there are people who will be. And I think Occupy, there were a lot of students involved with that, and I think that interest is still out there, even if there aren't organized Occupy groups on every campus. Reaching out to environmental student groups, I think, is a really good. We're doing a lot of that at the national level because issues of climate change, while that may be what folks are most feeling is urgent right now, and like anything else, we're really not trying to pull them over into doing our work instead, but rather to make the connections. And so maybe it's, you know, doing a joint presentation together on campus, or maybe it's speaking at events that they're holding or a rally that they're doing and making the connections. Most climate change groups are really eager and see the connections to corporate power and are very happy to make space for Move to Amend speakers. And so, you know, making those linkages to folks who are already doing activism is also a good idea. Interest seems to be more green, Marxist, and anarchist. Move to Amend is not vogue. That's Victor again. Well, I would say that some of that is on us, right? It's funny because we do get a lot of, you know, there are a lot of folks who say, oh, our website is too left and it's too, you know, it's too progressive. But then a lot of young people look at our website and say it's way too American flaggy and older and fuddy-duddy, and you know, I'm not seeing the passion. And so in some ways maybe we're a little bit more actually making no one happy. They say for writing an article that in the news, that might be the way to go. But on the other hand, I think some of it is, you know, how are we pitching ourselves and what are we presenting to folks? And again, having had 45 people respond to our last intern applications, not all of them younger, but most of them younger, and hearing people's responses and how really eager people were to be involved with doing our internship, I would say that there is no question in my mind that there are young people out there who are passionate and want to work on the more systemic issues and completely understand what Move to Amend is doing and how radical it is, and that it meets their needs for working at the radical level. And by radical, I mean systemic and to the root and core. So for folks who are exploring something else, then, you know, maybe they don't need to, that's not who you're looking for. But there are lots of young people who I think would be receptive to Move to Amend if we were doing more outreach to them. And also maybe we need some of that edge to what we're doing. Again, if you look at history and social movements, it shows that the wings of those movements, the young people, are oftentimes what moved things forward at a pace that wasn't a snail's crawl. And we want to get this done in our lifetime. So maybe we need some of that energy and that push that young people often are the ones to provide. Let's see, let's go to Ted. Being nonprofit helps. I know about the letter for use in tabling, but what is the current status? Well, Move to Amend is still a 501c3, and we have a 501c4 application out, and our affiliates are not. Either one of those things, that's you're not legally connected with Move to Amend in the IRS sense of things. So if you're needing to be a nonprofit organization in order to present to student groups or to get access to campus, we can kind of do the same thing that we do for tabling or doing events, is allow you to borrow ours. But most of the time, actually, just being a community group is good enough, and there isn't necessarily a need for a lot of paperwork. It's more that faculty and folks want to know that you're that you're going to stick around and that you're going to actually teach students something and that they're going to get something out of it, and not just be, you know, shuffling papers for someone. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? I see, let's see, Peg asked earlier, how do you tie Republican efforts to block the student vote to Move to Amend? And I would say that a lot of students are, you know, not universally, but a lot of students are aware of the efforts to disenfranchise them. Oftentimes it is by the right wing, and so making those connections to, you know, money and politics and how there is a real effort to change laws and make it so that people have to have voter IDs or have picture IDs to vote, or the same-day voter registration is being attacked in the states that have it. Yeah, absolutely. It would be a good idea, and maybe this is something we can help with at the national level as well, to have kind of a list of things that might be more relevant to students to use as talking points when you're out tabling on student campuses. I would say also like student debt and the fact that, you know, most students are coming out of school indebted to large banking corporations is something of big concern for everyone who's in school right now or just came out of school. Yep, there we go. You just said that, Peg. So does anyone else have any questions? Do folks feel as though you've got some useful information? Is there anything that you're still not sure about that would be helpful in terms of thinking about how to approach campuses? I see Peg is asking for us to put up the chain of command again, so we can do that. And this sort of varies. If it's a smaller private school, it might not have all of these departments. But yeah, this is a good template. And again, as John said, the student affairs or the dean of students that there on the left is sort of the best place to begin in terms of that's often where student clubs are housed and where the money for students to do their own organizing comes from. So that office would also tell you where you can put up posters and you know, they might even have a list of the student groups and when they meet. It depends on the school. Bart asks, are grad students, especially union activists, helpful to get to the larger student body? Do you have anything to say for that?
You know, in my experience, there's a huge separation between undergrad students and grad students, and so if you're trying to get to the larger student body, grad students may not be as effective as talking to undergrad students. That being said, they are, you know, in on campus, and they often have very deep and personal connections to faculty, and they do often, you know, do TAs for classes, and so they are involved on campus. They are but you know, there's some caveats there, and you have to go in knowing that it's not going to reach a huge amount of people if you talk to grad students, but they are pretty involved, and they are a good link between faculty and undergrad students. So I don't think that's a bad idea.
Yeah, and I think if you're trying to reach into union organizing as well, then then there certainly is a good link there. And it also kind of, I think, depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get a campus group started, then undergrads probably are more likely to be the pool of people who are going to be involved with that, because graduate students are just busy and more likely to have families, and they're also teaching or have other jobs. So they might not have as much time as an undergrad. On the other hand, you know, the fight in Wisconsin 2 years ago was, you know, grad students from the grad student union were key and essential to being able to hold down the Capitol. And a couple of our coordinators of our Madison group actually are grad students who are active with the student union there, or the campus union. So it just sort of depends. Certainly they're active. It's just maybe that they're a little bit more focused on their activism, whereas one of the benefits of undergrads is that they're more open to kind of trying all different kinds of things because they haven't figured out what they're most interested in yet. And reaching people at that point might be really beneficial. Let's see. Ted asks, in your experience, is there a difference between community colleges and four-year schools? Do you have an answer for that? Or?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I think there is quite a big difference. Demographically, there's a big difference. I think at four-year schools, it's a lot more, the students are a lot more similar in age, maybe not in socioeconomic background, but at least in age. Community colleges, there's a wide variation in age and demographics and goals. You know, it's hard to kind of generalize, but there is and this presentation was mostly geared towards four-year schools, and so I don't know much about organizing with community colleges, and I would assume that the student organizations are a little more disparate and maybe not as centralized. I'm not entirely sure, though. Kaitlin, do you want to?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit because we have a community college here and we have the state university. And while Democracy Unlimited has done a number of presentations to classrooms at the community college as well, and I would say we have a good relationship with faculty there. So we have partnered with them sometimes for doing events and using the community college as a venue. So it's not a resource to overlook. On the other hand, in terms of organizing with students, that has been easier at the university for some of the reasons that John outlined. And my sense, having a good relationship with one of the core faculty at the community college who has been trying to do community organizing on the campus, is that that is hard because of people's different ages, and also because they're kind of, they're not like in school 100% the way that oftentimes students in a four-year school are. And so while they're busy with school, they also kind of, their whole social life is geared around being a student, and if they're an activist, being a student activist, and all their friends are the same, whereas that's not going to be true in a community college necessarily. Oftentimes it's not. And so it's just a little bit harder to break into the community because there's not as much of a community that's centered around the school. But there are certainly resources, and in terms of doing presentations, and oftentimes there might be classes where students can get extra credit or even need to do a project. If it's a cool teacher, do a project in the community at a community college. You can find that as well. So it'd be worth looking at the faculty there and going to seeing what you can get, whether you get any interest. Are there existing student organizations? Where? Peg asked that. There are student organizations that are kind of, that there are organizations that have chapters on campuses, and so there's not like a list that I'm aware of anywhere, but like PIRG or sometimes even Greenpeace or Amnesty International, lots of these folks have, these larger NGOs have chapters, and they actually have like whole programs dedicated to student organizing. And so looking at some of those larger national organizations and starting there. But I think that what is more effective is actually to try and get a sense of what the student groups are in the university that you're trying to target, because there's no set rule about groups needing to be connected with national groups. And so there might be groups that, are just working on climate change or environmental issues generally, or connected with Occupy that are going to be unique to the school, and you're not going to find them on a list anywhere. It's a matter of doing some, research into the school itself and identifying students who are active. Oftentimes students who are involved with student government will have a good sense. Maybe even the clubs are a branch underneath the student government, as is the case here in Humboldt State, and that was also the case where I went to school at a private school. So that would be a good place to start. Oh, I see. You're asking if there are any college Move to Amend groups. We actually, like John said earlier, we are not looking to create college Move to Amend groups, because the whole kind of way that we see affiliates operating in a community is structurally different than the way a student group on a college campus normally operates. What we're suggesting is that affiliates should start to think about having a wing of their affiliate. So if it's, Chicago Move to Amend or San Mateo Move to Amend, maybe having a wing of that affiliate be a campus club, and having the campus club meet on its own on the campus and do some of its own activity on the campus, but also participate in the affiliate as well. And maybe that doesn't mean that everybody has to come to every meeting, but have a separate meeting and then quarterly there's a joint meeting, or every other month the meeting is a joint meeting, so that you're hitting the campus, but you're also still engaged with the community. And the reason why is because we can't do this by just organizing on campuses. That's not really a venue for, say, pushing massive community education or getting state legislators to move on something. Just because of the structure of what we're trying to do, campus organizing is a little bit tangential. On the other hand, it's an important body of people who live in communities as well, and after they're done with school, they're also going to either stay in the community or go elsewhere and carry what they've learned with them. But also, they move on, and so the transient nature of students really doesn't facilitate well having a established structure and a group that is going to be dependable for potentially, 5-7 years, which is what our campaign looks like. So that's why we're trying to figure out how to kind of do this more hybrid of organizing with campuses and on campuses, but not having that be the place where people are affiliates. Having said all that, there's nothing in our structure that would prohibit a student group from forming an affiliate. It's just not the way we encourage it to happen. A little bit of research that I've done, 2 schools in the Philadelphia area suggest that college Republicans and Democratic clubs are moribund, not active at all since the last presidential election. This is Ted. Yeah, it's definitely true that in between elections, the main groups doing political organizing maybe don't have as much to do, or they don't have as much going on. Is that your experience as well? Yeah, John's saying yes. So I would say that campus greens might be more likely to be more active in between presidential election cycles. Not every campus has greens, but they also would probably be natural allies, since the Green Party has in the platform to be pass a constitutional amendment to oppose corporate personhood. So that would be one option. And then it doesn't hurt to reach out, and if you find that they're not active, then then that's maybe something to think about for 2014 or 2016, and to be prepared for that. However, the difficulty is they're probably going to want to be working on the presidential campaign, because that's kind of where they gear up. So that might be something to think about as an entree, and find someone who is the president, but maybe they're not doing that much, and they could help get you access in other ways, or form a different group that would be a Move to Amend specific group. But it's good that you did the research, Ted, and if you can contact somebody, maybe even just getting some help figuring out what campus groups are more active right now. Because that's the thing about them, they ebb and flow, which is part of the drawback of thinking about them as the affiliate for a community. Is there any other questions? We're at about an hour. Normally we take about an hour and 15 minutes, so we still have time if anybody else has any questions, but if we're done, we could be done. There is a survey at the end of this webinar, and we'd love you to fill it out and give us your feedback. It's quick. And the next webinar is July 9th, which is not the first Tuesday, it's the second Tuesday. And we're skipping the week of July 4th, because a lot of affiliates will be doing things, and some of us will be out of the office here. And that will be the launch of our We the People Listen campaign. And that is our door knocking effort to do community door knocking all around the country with a survey instrument. So we'll tell you more about that if you register for the webinar on July 9th. And if you have any questions about what we covered here, or of course generally going forward, the general email is info@movetoamend.org. If you're an affiliate, then you know that there's an email specifically for affiliates, and encourage you to use that one. And then you can always call our office as well, 707-269-0984. And John will be our intern for about 1 more month. So he'll be here in the office if you have specific questions for him. And then the other 2 folks who work here as interns also have experience doing campus organizing as well. John is the best, although all of our interns are the best, but John is the best in his own way. Thanks, Phyllis. Everyone else can't see that comment, but John has helped the folks in Minneapolis a fair amount, so thank you, John. Is there anything else that you want to add to close out? Nope. Okay, well, thank you very much for doing this presentation, and thanks, shout out to Sage in Chicago, who's a current student right now, who also helped prepare this presentation and the materials that we will put up. So there's going to be some additional resources that we'll add on the slide for this webinar when the webinar is posted, and then that will be in our toolkit generally on organizing with students. And if there's anything that you would like to see that's not there, let us know, and we can either start working on it or help direct you to where you can find the info to create that resource yourself. So with that, I'm going to end this meeting. You'll automatically be taken to a page with a survey on it if you could just take a second to give us your feedback, and then you'll be done. Thanks everyone who tuned in, and we'll see you next month on July 9th, if not before. Thanks. Have a good night. Say bye.
Thanks. See ya.